Yeah, looking back, I'm my own man. The UFC doesn't control us, but honestly, I probably should have said no to that fight. I wasn't healthy enough for it. But when you get called into the big office and they tell you, if you don't say yes, someone else will, and you'll be pushed to the back burner, you feel pressured. So you say yes and hope everything works out. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So how did it really turn out? Because that fight was huge. You felt like you won, but it went the other way. At the end of the day, this sport is crazy. 1 minute you're on top, the next minute you're forgotten. Look at Dricus. He loses to Chimaev, and suddenly nobody's talking about him. That's just how this game works. Honestly, I don't find my happiness in rankings or belts anymore. I love training. I love being around the guys. I love fighting. But this sport doesn't define me the way it used to. As you get older, you realize the UFC logo and the blue check mark don't really matter. Fighting is in my blood. It's who I am. But it doesn't define my entire life anymore. Dricus du Plessis Piraeus Israel Adesanya. Dricus du Plessis recently had some huge praise for Israel Adesanya. Dricus believes Izzy is already a Hall of Famer and has nothing left to prove inside the octagon. When asked if Israel is planning his exit strategy, Dricus said that Izzy is the type of guy who will leave on his own terms. He won't be forced out of the sport. He explained that for fighters, retirement is incredibly hard. This is what they live for. Sometimes, fighters need someone to tell them it's time, but Dricus doesn't believe that moment has come for Israel yet. He said that in terms of chasing titles and accomplishments, that's probably not where Israel's mindset is anymore. Dricus even said he almost guarantees Izzy won't be chasing another belt because his goals are different now. According to Dricus, Adesanya's focus is on fighting the best and most exciting opponents and enjoying the sport. He believes Israel has already done everything there is to do. Dricus called him one of the greatest fighters to ever step into the sport and said that right now, Israel should just enjoy fighting, entertain the fans, and do what he loves. Because he's already cemented his legacy. Gable Steveson Kyle Elsfar UFC DBT. Gable Steveson is officially making waves in MMA. He's currently 3-0 in his fighting career, with all of his wins coming by first-round knockout. He's set to face Hugo Lazama at MFL 3, and Gable made it clear that if he gets a spectacular win, he's calling for a UFC debut immediately. He said that in this sport, opportunities come fast. You beat one opponent, then another big opportunity shows up. That's just how MMA works. When asked directly if he would call for a UFC contract with a knockout win, Gable didn't hesitate. He said he absolutely would call for it. He explained that if he gets another big knockout, that would be his third MMA finish, +1 in dirty boxing, and he believes that should be enough to earn a shot in the UFC. But he also added that everything depends on how the cards fall. If the opportunity comes, it comes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. He's just focused on performing. Daniel Cormier Basikas Joaquin Buckley. Daniel Cormier recently weighed in on Joaquin Buckley's ongoing back and forth with Terence Crawford about MMA versus boxing. Buckley had been calling out Crawford and talking about the differences between the two sports, and DC gave him full credit. Shakur Stevenson recently said the UFC could never be boxing, but Cormier strongly disagreed. He said Buckley was right. The UFC doesn't have to be boxing. Cormier explained that boxing today doesn't have the same level of massive events that it used to. He mentioned the legendary eras of Ali, Tyson, and the Four Kings, and said those days had constant mega fights. He even mentioned Lennox Lewis and how different the heavyweight scene felt back then. Cormier said the Canelo vs. Terence Crawford fight felt big, but overall, modern boxing doesn't excite him the same way. He explained that today's fights often lack the aggressive, knockout, hungry prospects that fans used to love. Cormier said that Crawford once again proved why he's the best controlling Canelo, but he admitted the fight wasn't that exciting. Then he compared it to the UFC, saying the UFC is just more fun, more exciting, and simply better for fans. He said Buckley was right to call that out and that MMA doesn't need to be boxing. In his opinion, the UFC is better entertainment right now, and that's just the reality. Brendan Schaub slams UFC heavyweight division. Brendan Schaub recently went off on the current state of the UFC heavyweight division, and he did not hold back. He said the division is terrible and a shell of what it used to be. He even said that when he fought, the heavyweight division was stacked with killers. Schaub told fans to go back and watch the Pride Heavyweight Grand Prix, or even Bellator 10 years ago, and compare it to today. He said the division used to be a murderer's row of elite fighters, but now it feels empty. According to Schaub, it doesn't have to be this way. He said if the UFC signed Rico, came to terms with Francis Ngannou, and brought in Gable Steveson, things would instantly get exciting. He criticized the UFC for not addressing the division's problems, especially with the current heavyweight champion sidelined with serious eye surgery and Jon Jones talking about only one more fight. He said the division needs stars and competition, and that the UFC should be doing everything possible to revive it. Schaub even suggested having Hunter Campbell or others step in to fix things if Dana White isn't handling it directly. He listed potential matchups like Francis vs. Jon Jones, Francis vs. Aspinall, and mixing in new contenders to rebuild the division. But according to Schaub, the UFC seems content with the current situation, and he questioned whether that's really acceptable for the health of the heavyweight division. Beneil Dariush hints at retirement. Beneil Dariush recently hinted that his next fight could be his last. At the moment, Dariush doesn't have a fight scheduled, but he admitted that he's taking things one fight at a time. He's 36 years old and coming off a brutal loss, where he was TKO'd just 16 seconds into the first round. In an interview, Beneil said he's been in the UFC for 12 years, and he's not sure how much longer he'll continue. He said his next fight could be his final fight, and he doesn't know what will happen after that. However, he also said he's excited for the future and plans to stay involved in MMA in some way, even after his fighting career ends. Gerald Meerschaert reveals Ilkatayan with Khamzat Chimaev. Gerald Meerschaert recently revealed a backstage altercation with Khamzat Chimaev that fans never saw. The two fought back in 2020, where Khamzat knocked him out in just 17 seconds. But according to Gerald, there was more tension behind the scenes. He explained that there was a major language barrier and that Khamzat kept mumbling, which made communication awkward and frustrating. Gerald said Khamzat kept interrupting him and things got heated. He said that they ran into each other in the hallway with their teams, and Khamzat walked up and got in his face. They started talking trash, but neither of them fully understood what the other was saying. Gerald admitted he probably said something stupid, and Khamzat got aggressive. But Gerald didn't want to escalate things in the hallway. He also mentioned posting the Thomas the Tank Engine meme, which he thought was hilarious, but Khamzat might have taken it as disrespect. Gerald said Khamzat told him, "I'm not a trained brother, don't call me that." He said they were face to face with no cameras around and it felt tense. Khamzat eventually walked away, and his coaches were surprisingly polite, which confused Gerald. He said the whole situation was strange but interesting, and he still has no hard feelings toward Khamzat. Gerald said Khamzat has done great in the sport and deserves respect, but that fight week was definitely intense. He also said he wished he handled the press conference differently and reflected on how emotions can get high during fight week. Gordon Ryan explains how to beat Khamzat Chimaev. Gordon Ryan recently explained how he would approach a fight against Khamzat Chimaev. He said the key is chaining techniques together instead of relying on just one approach. He explained that many fighters either go into heisting or rolling, but they don't combine them effectively. He pointed out how Dricus tried certain techniques, but Khamzat was able to follow and control his hips, keeping him broken down. Gordon said Khamzat's game is all about controlling the opponent's hands and positioning. He explained that Khamzat puts fighters into rear chest locks, forces their hands to the ground, and keeps them carrying his body weight. This makes it almost impossible for opponents to stand up or break free. He said Khamzat can strike while the opponent can't defend themselves, which makes his grappling extremely dangerous. Gordon believes that combining movement, positioning, and submissions is the key to beating someone like Khamzat. Islam Makhachev not fighting Ilia Topuria next. Ali Abdelaziz recently shut down the idea of Islam Makhachev fighting Ilia Topuria next. He posted on X, making it clear that Justin Gaethje is fighting for the undisputed lightweight title. He said that if Topuria doesn't want the fight, Justin will fight for the undisputed belt next. And if Islam wants to fight Topuria, Islam will choose where and when. But he also made it clear that Islam's next fight will definitely be against a real welterweight. This statement pretty much shut down the rumors of Makhachev vs Topuria happening next. Alex Pereira makes $100,000 bet with Valter Walker. Alex Pereira recently made a $100,000 bet with Valter Walker before a Karate Combat event. He bet Walker that he wouldn't win his fight by heel hook. Walker is known for his heel hook finishes, with all 4 of his UFC wins coming by that submission. However, Walker was facing Zion Clark, who was born without legs due to a rare disorder. Walker ended up winning the fight by rear naked choke, but at one point he did attempt the heel hook, which made the bet even more interesting. And top fan comments from last video, and that's gonna wrap up today's MMA news. Thanks for watching. Here are the top 3 comments from the last video. The first comment was about Sean Strickland calling out Khamzat Chimaev for inactivity. J Cloud said, "I'm with Sean. I love watching Khamzat fight, but imagine being Ilya dealing with real life problems and everyone calling to